Welcome to the eighth and the last class of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras. This is the Sādhana Pādaḥ, the chapter on practice. So, just to recap, we'll go here. This chapter is divided into two portions. In the first portion, Patanjali lays the foundation for Ashtanga Yoga, the eighth path of practice. And the way he describes, he explains why we need this eight path practice to still the mind. And he says the root cause of all our suffering is the kleshas. And kleshas are the deep imprints. And through the practice of yoga, these are removed. And this unfortunate aspect of this kleshas is this continues across the lifetimes due to these imprints. So samskaras are the general imprints. Kleshas are the ones which cause all the problems of those imprints. So imprints can be of many types, and kleshas are the ones which cause problems. And then Patanjali talks about this avidya, the wrong understanding of the Purusha with the Prakriti. Purusha is the real you the consciousness. The body is a temporary thing that you wear. And similarly, the mind is also a tool that you use. But it's only by polishing the mind and taking good care of the body, you can make the tool perfect so you see clearly. So everything is important, but at the same time, one should not get overly concerned with the body. So the body is used for, and even the mind, Prakriti, is used for bhoga, it's for experience, and apavarga, or for liberation. So it's only through this body and the mind you can get liberated. Therefore, it is important to take good care of the body and the mind. And then Patanjali talks about kaivalyam, or liberation. Okay, so that is the first portion. And in the second portion, Patanjali talks about ashtavangani, the eighth path or eight-limbed practice. Then yamas and niyamas as the basis, the founding platform on which everything is built. Then we saw āsana, and now we go into Prāṇāyāma. So far everything is clear. This is how Patanjali builds up the second chapter. So Prāṇāyāma. Prāṇāyāma, very important. So Prāṇāyāma, as we saw, is prana plus ayama. So yama is, we've seen yama before, right? Yamas and niyamas. Yamas means it is control, discipline. It usually refers to external discipline with respect to the world. So ahimsa, satya, asteya, aparigraha, brahmacharya, all these are with respect to external people. Ahimsa, not harming others. Asteya, not stealing others' property. Aparigraha, not hoarding others' stuff or taking too much from nature, more than what you need. Brahmacharya, sexual restraint towards others. So there's all other coming in. And satya also, not lying. So in niyamas, it's all about self. So it's internal observances. It is shaucha, santosha, tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana. Shaucha, cleanliness of the mind and the body. Santosha, contentment with oneself. Shaucha, santosha. Tapas, austerity, to purify one's own mind and body. Tapas, swadhyaya, study of the scriptures, and surrender to the divine. So it's all internal observances. Now, yama means control, right? So ahayama means great control. So remember the word means great, means negation. So it refers to extension of the prana through breathing exercise. In fact, one of the Haṭha Yogic texts says it's in industry, the number of breaths is fixed. So how you extend your life is by making the breath long, dhīrgha, and also subtle, dhīrgha sukshma, we'll see. So prana is the life force, ayama is extension through great control. That is the meaning of pranayama. Tasmin sati swasa prashvasayor gati viccheda prāṇāyāma. Tasmin, in that. So what does it show? It means you have to be established in asana or posture. Having established in that, pranayama is the regulation. Swasa prashvasa, regulation of what? Inhalation and exhalation. Swasa prashvasayor. Gati viccheda. Gati means rate or metering. So gati is the rate. So gati means it's just a meter. Viccheda means regulation. So we've seen the word vichinno dharanam. So the kleshamula karmashayo and in the avidya kshetram uttaresham prasupta tanu vichinno dharanam. Avidya is the foremost of all the kleshas. Avidya kshetram uttaresham. Avidya places highest gold medal, and the kleshas that it causes can be prasupta. Tanu means feeble, prasupta means latent, prasupta tanu, vichinna means intermittent. So like that here, vichinna means it's like regulate or cutting off, interrupt. And what it essentially means is that eventually you regulate it to so much that the breathing almost stops. So that is the mark. Pranayama, it helps the mind still, because when the breath slows down, the mind also stills. So the eventual goal of pranayama is to make the breath so long as though you're not breathing at all. Pranayama is not deep breathing exercises. It's a mistake. It is a potent manipulation of the autonomic nervous system and subtle energy channels called the nadis. If the body is in discomfort or pain from the posture, the sympathetic nervous system is activated. There's an alarm that's happening. So subtle energies cannot be manipulated. Therefore, asana is a safe vessel to contain the energy of pranayama. So that's why one has to be established in asana. So autonomous nervous system is the rest. So autonomous nervous system contains of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And sympathetic is the flight or flight, and parasympathetic is the rest and relax. So it is a potent manipulation of the autonomous nervous system and subtle energy channels. So asana is a prerequisite for pranayama. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, Haṭha Yoga Pradīpikā and also other texts give a word of caution. Yatha simho gajo pyagraha bhavetyasya bhaved vashya shanai shanai tataiva sevito vayuhu anyata hanti sadakam. Vayuhu here refers to the prana. Yatha simhaha gajaha vyagraha, as a lion. Gajaha is elephant. Simha is lion, we know. Gajaha is elephant. Vyagraha is tiger. Bhaved vashya shanai shavane. They are tamed. Vashya means get to master them or to tame them. One has to do shanai shanai, slowly, slowly. So also with the breath, to bring it under control, one has to do the practice slowly, not rush. Otherwise, it hanti sadakam, anyata hanti sadakam. Anyata means otherwise. Hanti means kills. Sadakam, the practitioner. So otherwise, it kills the practitioner. Okay. Okay. The significance of the term viccheda. So viccheda, as I said, is cutting off, interrupt, pause, regulation, making it intermittent. So which meaning do you actually use? So it also means regulation. It can also mean pause, totally cutting off. So do you use the word regulation or pause of inhalation and exhalation? So this is a tricky thing, because the Swami Hariharananda gives an explanation. So sometimes people use this, sometimes this, and there is a debate. So by regulation and gradually increasing the time between inhalation and exhalation, Patanjali points to the ultimate goal of pranayama. It is kumbhaka. That is the ultimate goal, breath retention. During kumbhaka, the mind stops. That is the significance of the term viccheda, the regulation. It is towards the end goal of retention, stopping of the breath. Of course, you can't stop it all the time, but during that time, the mind really stops. It gets the rest. The breath, prana, and the mind are inextricably linked. They're the two sides of the same coin. So you control the mind through the prana. If you make the mind terrified, the breath immediately becomes fast and shallow. Conversely, if you deliberately make the breath slow, deep, and rhythmic, the mind becomes calm. It is a psychological imperative. So they're all two sides of the same coin. So prana and the mind, chitta, they're both two sides of the same coin. Now, Patanjali goes to the details of pranayama. So he explained, now he defines so previously he says, having established in this, pranayama is the regulation of inhalation and exhalation. Now he says, he gives more details. Satu bhakyapyantara stamba vritti deshakala sankhyabihi paridrishto dirgha sukshmaha. Long verse. Satu means that pranayama mentioned in the previous sloka. Tu means however. Satu means that, however, that pranayama, however, can be these modifications. Vritti are the modifications. Modifications of the life breath are bahyaha, external. However, those modifications of the life breath are bahyaha, external, antaraha, internal, stamba, stationary, suspended. So these vrittis, these modifications of the life breath are of these forms: external, internal, and stationary. It is measured by desha, place, time, kala, sankhyaha, number, and paridrishto dirgha sukshmaha, and it's observed all around, and it becomes dirgha sukshmaha, eventually becomes dirgha means long, sukshmaha means subtle. So now let's look at all these things: external, internal, and stationary. So external is through your feeling it through your nose and all that. Internal means inside the body, you're feeling the breath. And the prana, actually, when you do pranayama, it's throughout. You're feeling it from when you engage the bandha, all from the pelvic floor. Even though breath, the air is not flowing, the prana is flowing there. So external, we are feeling it in the nostrils. Internal, and then it can be stationary, suspended, and it's measured by place where you're focusing the attention of the breath. Is it the chest, the abdomen, all that, by place and time, how long you have each inhalation and exhalation, then the number, and it eventually becomes long and subtle. So bahya vritti is external operation. It is it can also be looked at as exhalation, rechaka. Abhyantara vritti is internal operation. So this external, internal, there are two meanings given. So external can mean pushing out. Bahya means it can mean pushing out. Internal can mean taking in. It can also mean, external means feeling it in and the nostrils and the tips where it's going out. And internal means feeling it internally as the prana. So there are two meanings that are given. In Swami Hariharananda, he uses bahya vritti, external operation, which is exhalation. Abhyantara vritti, internal operation, which is inhalation. It is the act of drawing air and prana inward. Stamba vritti is suspended operation, retention. So because the stamba vritti is there, the stationary or suspended, I think Swami Hariharananda's explanation is probably more apt, I think, because um, Bahya and Antara, external, internal, it can, some people interpret it as feeling the prana like externally when it's going out, and some people interpret it as feeling it internally. But Swami Hariharananda Aranya, he interprets it as Bahya means Bahya Vritti, and Abhyantara means it is internal operation which is taking in. So vritti is movement. So bahya vritti is the act of expelling air and prana outward. Abhyantara vritti is the act of drawing air and prana in. And retention is kumbhaka. This is deliberately holding the breath after a complete inhale or after a complete exhale. So after a complete inhale, it is antara kumbhaka. You're holding it in. After a complete exhale is bahya kumbhaka. It is a complete exhale. It is after you're exhaling, putting it out, and then you're holding it. It is called stamba, pillar, because the breath is held rigid and motionless like a pillar. Stamba vritti. So bahya antara stamba, suspended. Okay. How to measure progress in pranayama? That's where Patanjali talks about desha, kala, sankhya. Where do you feel, so desha, where do you feel the breath? Chest, navel, pelvic floor. The yogi learns to direct prana to specific locations. Kala, how long does each phase last? And then sankhya, this refers to the number of repetitions or rounds of a certain technique like nadi shodhana per sitting. Okay, so desha, kala, sankhya, place, time duration, and number and count. And the goal, what's the goal? Dhirga sukshmaha. Breath, instead of breathing 15 times a minute, your yogi might breathe only 2 or 3 times a minute. And it becomes subtle. The breath becomes incredibly fine, quiet, and smooth. There's no turbulence. It just becomes very gradual. The mind also just mirrors that state. Becomes very calm, and it's very fine. There's no turbulence in the mind. That's how it becomes. Okay. So far, is this clear? Are there any questions here? Okay. Right. Then Patanjali talks about the fourth type of pranayama. This, he says, Bhakyapyantara Vishayakshepi Chaturtaha. There's a fourth type of pranayama that transcends the sphere of the internal and the external breath. This pranayama is spontaneous retention of the breath. He doesn't say that. Bahya antara vishaya akshepi chaturtaha. He says bahya means external, abhyantara is internal, vishaya, the sphere of relevance. There is a fourth type of pranayama that transcends the sphere of the internal and external breath. This pranayama is spontaneous retention of breath. You don't have to put in any effort. It just spontaneously, the breath stops. This happens in meditation. A lot of people, my teacher would say that he would, when they go into these jhanas, the 4 states of successive absorption in samprajñata samadhi, remember? We saw vitarka, vichara, ananda, smita, the 4 states we saw. There, sometimes the breathing stops, especially asmita. When it comes to that, the breathing will stop. And then suddenly the people will realize and they will panic. Oh, I am not breathing. So that panic will happen. And so they'll just wake up scared. So this happens sometimes in meditation. What I'm trying to say is the breathing stops on its own. You're not putting in any effort. And that happens when you reach very still states of mind. So this is the fourth type of pranayama. This is the spontaneous retention of breath, kevala kumbhaka. Okay, spontaneous versus deliberate retention. So the stamba vritti in the previous Sutra, Bhakya Abhyantara Stamba Vritti. So Stamba Vritti refers to, it's like a stambam means pillar. Dvaja stambam, in temple they have the pillar. So Stamba Vritti refers to the deliberate retention of breath, actively applying willpower to stop the flow of air. And the Chaturtaha or the Kevala Kumbhaka refers to spontaneous retention, happens naturally as a result of intense concentration in deep meditation. Kevala means on its own. It's called solo. It's called solo because it exists alone. It is independent of inhalation or exhalation. It just is. There's no relation. Whereas here, we saw that. So it can, the retention can be internal. It can be antara kumbhaka or bahya kumbhaka. It can be after inhale or after an exhale, whereas this is called kevala kumbhaka. The reason it's called kevala, it's independent. It's just solo. It doesn't depend on inhalation or exhalation. It just happens like that. And you can have a little bit of air inside, you can completely exhale, can be completely inhaled. It just happens. It's just there. Okay, there's no rule there. Okay, yes, Sumitra.
So this Kevala Kumbhaka, does it happen spontaneously? Like, is it that hold after exhale or after inhale? It could be, or it could be either.
That's what I'm saying. There's no rule like that. You can have half. Suddenly you're breathing, you're halfway through the inhalation or exhalation, it'll stop. You don't even know. So
is it something very similar to what happens after that rapid exhale that we do?
Yes, that's correct.
There is the like automatically
Kapalabhati, for example, you do Kapalabhati. Yes. So for those who attended the Art of Living, and there is, after you do this, and there's for some time there's spontaneous retention. And then they tell you to engage the bandhas, the locks they call it. So this happens on its own. So it's deliberate retention. You're trying to hold the ball and the surface, so it doesn't either sink or come up, like halfway down. Whereas spontaneous retention, the ball just comes on its own. Like that's the example that's given. Okay, so now we go to the first benefit of pranayama. Tatachiyate prakashaparanam. Tataha, thus, then it destroys, kshiyate, destroys, prakasha avaranam. Avaranam means a covering. It is not abharanam. Abharanam means ornament. Avaranam means a great covering. Okay, so it destroys the veil covering the light within. And what it is that, so this Krishnamacharya would quote all the time, and his student Srivatsa Ramaswamy would also quote. So there is Rajas and Tamas, right? So Rajas is all this high energy, extra energy. To quench Rajas, asana practice is recommended. So especially for kids, asana practice is very important to get some calm of the body. But for middle-aged people who are working sedentary jobs, tamas builds in. That's why people start gaining weight and all this happens. The sedentary nature results in tamas. What tamas causes is, it causes accumulation. In Ayurveda, it causes accumulation of ama all over the body. And by doing pranayama, apparently the ama is cleared. So that's what is meant by, it removes the veil covering the light within. So it removes the tamas. And pranayama is recommended to remove the tamas. Asana practice is to reduce the rajas. That's why for kids, a lot of kids, it's good, important, because otherwise they're restless. So they have to be able to sit down. So asana practice. Then for people like working people from 30s to 50s, it is tamoguna becomes high due to the sedentary nature for many people. And for that, pranayama is recommended. So prakasha avaranam. The prakasha is a light, is the sattva. That's a true state of the mind. Why is our true state not experienced? Due to the veil of dust or the ignorance caused by rajas, which stokes the impurities, and tamas, which makes the dust settle to create the veil. The veil is the karma accumulated from past actions rooted in avidya or ignorance. So in this sutra, Vyasa explains how the covering is destroyed. He emphasizes while physical austerities can purify the gross body, pranayama is the supreme austerity because it acts as an internal fire. It directly purifies the subtle mental layers, burning away the karmic impurities, the tamas that shroud the natural luminous cognition of the buddhi. And Vyasa in fact says, there is no austerity superior to pranayama. It cleanses impurities and the light of knowledge shines forth. And even in the Sankhya Yoga scholarship, it's highly likely that Vyasa is quoting earlier Sankhya master, often attributed to the sage Panchashika, and to validate his point on the supreme purifying power of the breath. And even in the Bhagavad Gītā, there is this shloka 4.29. In the 4th chapter, Bhagavan talks about yajñas. One of them is pranayama as a yajña. Apane juhvati pranam, prane panam tata pare, prāṇa pānagati rudva, prāṇāyāma parayanaha. So too, others offer apana, exhalation, into the fire of prāṇa, and prāṇa into the fire of apana. So essentially what they're doing is they are optimizing prāṇa and apana. It's said that when prāṇa and apana meet, there's a lot of energy produced. So controlling the rate of inhalation and exhalation, they are committed to the practice of pranayama. Prāṇa, apana, gati, rudva. Gati is the rate, controlling rudva, controlling the rate of prana and apana, pranayama parayana. So they are committed, parayanam. It's the great destination, great goal. That is, they're committed to the goal of pranayama. Ayanam means the destination. So that is why Bhagavan, Vishnu is called Narayana, because Nara Ayanam. So this ultimate destination of the human is Narayana. Okay. So a dull mirror becomes a shining mirror. The sattva here refers to the prakasha as the sattva, the true state of the mind. Then the second benefit, dharana shucha yogyata manasaha, and the mind becomes fit for concentration. That's what happens. So before sitting for meditation, pranayama is recommended. So we've also seen, if you remember, we saw one sutra from the first chapter. Patanjali describes about various ways to make the mind calm. And finally, he says, yatapi matatyanatva. By whatever means possible, try to still the mind. It's such an important thing to still the mind. So do whatever you can to still the mind. Do you all remember that? So he talks about the various conditions of the mind, and then he says how to make the mind very stable. And he talks that by different methods he gives: emotional intelligence, and then all of Maitri, Karuna, Mudito, Peksharam, And let me see that sutra slide where different techniques. Okay, yeah, there's all these techniques to make the mind calm. So calm the mind socially, psychologically, using subtle senses. And so psychologically is using the breath regulation. So we saw this sutra in the first chapter. So this is from the first chapter. Prachartana vidaranapyam va pranasya. By a combination of long exhalation, prachardana literally means emitting. In Ayurveda, prachardana refers to a emetic to induce vomiting, to clear the stomach, to detox. Vidarana means restraining. So by a combination of exhalation and retention, he doesn't use inhalation because that is the sympathetic nervous system. He's talking about parasympathetic nervous system. The mind becomes steady and calm. Okay. Now, at this point, so we've seen how to make the mind calm. So typically, I've collected these points from various teachers on guidelines for studying the sutras. So we've been studying the sutras. So this is a good point to take a step and look at the whole big picture in a wholesome way, because we are also going to start studying the siddhis, and then natural tendency for people is to say, oh, all this is nonsense. It's all, I can't believe anything like that. But the way to do this is you have to study with the heart and not the brain. The brain can concoct stories, but the heart is true. Okay? And the study of these texts should leave you feeling light and free, not heavy and knotted. Debate. So there's a time for debate, but the problem with debate is it can often be driven by ego, and it can stir up the very sediments of the lake of the mind that one is trying to settle. Therefore, listen, reflect, and ask questions, not debate to appease the ego. And these sutras were written in a very pithy fashion to serve as memory aids. Therefore, it needs a commentary, and often a commentary on a commentary, which is a sub-commentary to understand. Apart from small aspects of difference, most yogic texts, including many in Buddhism, are quite similar. Concepts in one text often become clear when studying a different text. And yes, the yogic texts talk about strange concepts like rebirth and the concept of Atma, Purusha. What is more, these concepts form the core of these texts. One may not be comfortable with these, and it's fine to ignore what does not make sense, but don't try to come up with your own interpretation of these texts that are drastically different from conventional wisdom. You will add to the knot pile. The study of yogic texts is very personal. You don't need to convince anyone, nor should you feel that others must subscribe to your views. When the time and conditions are right, these texts will automatically make sense. There's a sutra. The fourth chapter we'll see. Tatastat vipakanu gunanameva avipyaktir vasananam. Of these, only those vasanas, the subconscious impressions for which favorable conditions exist, will bear fruit in a given lifetime. So when the conditions are ready, these texts will automatically make sense. Okay. So now we will go to the last limb of the first five. So the last three limbs, dhyana, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, is in the third chapter. So this is until pratyāhāra. This is the external practices, and so bahiranga sadhana. These are the external practices. Yama, niyama, āsana, prāṇāyāma are the external practices. Patanjali goes up to the pratyāhāra, which is a transition from external to internal. Then the antaranga sadhana, or the internal practices, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, meditation, is talked about in the third chapter. Dharana is focus, dhyana is continuous uninterrupted focus. Like dharana is like the water flowing. Remember, somebody asked a question last time, I think Sumitra asked. Water doesn't flow continuously, it flows like there's turbulent flow. Whereas oil is viscous. When oil flows, it's smooth flow. So dhyana is like that. Samadhi is state when object and subject become one. We saw the horse example. The rider rides on the horse. It looks like one entity. Okay, so far any questions here? No questions? Okay.
I just have a quick question, clarification about the Desha, Kala, and Sankhya. Desha, I got it, but Kala and Sankhya.
Yeah, so Desha, Kala, Sankhya, Paridrishto, Dirgha, Sukshma. Kala, how long in seconds does each phase last? Desha,
Okay.
where do you feel the breath? Sankhya is the number. How many repetitions of a certain technique
Repetition.
per sitting?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so now we will go to the pratyāhāra. So pratyāhāra means prati plus ahara. Ahara means food. Here it refers to food for the senses. Prati means reverse. So pratyāhāra means reversing food for the senses or weaning off food for the senses by turning the senses inward. Transition from external practices to internal practices. Okay. So this is also called dhamaha. Shamaha, damaha are two important qualities for a yogi. Shamaha is calmness of the mind. Damaha is sense control. So that is pratyāhāra. Svavishaya samprayoge chittasya svarupanukaraiva indriyanam pratyāhāra. Or the way to do that, as Jayashri would do, is Svavishaya samprayoge chittasvarupanukaraiva indriyanam pratyāhāra. When the senses lose contact with the sense objects and act as if they are resembling the true state of the mind, it is called pratyāhāra. The mind is considered to be the leader of the senses. Do you remember the Puranjana Upakyanam? Let me try to see. Does anybody remember Puranjana Upakyanam? Yeah. Do you remember the story? We saw that. Anybody?
Yes.
Sumitra?
Yes, I remember the story.
Yes. There is, she has 10 servants, and there is 10 soldiers, and then there is the commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief is the mind. So the mind and his servants are the five senses. They call it Jnanendriya and the Karmendriya. Karmendriya are the power of action. That is Vak, Pani, Padam, Upayu, and Upastha. That is power of speech, hands, then locomotion with the feet, power of reproduction, power of excretion. So the mind is supposed to be the king of the senses. So when the senses lose contact with the sense objects and start to resemble the true nature of the mind, it's called pratyāhāra. Svavishaya, their own objects, asamprayoge, lose contact with, chitta swarupa anukara iva, as if resembling. Chitta swarupa means resembling the true nature of the chitta, mind, anukara iva, resembling, as though resembling the true nature of the mind. The state of the senses, indriyanam, is called pratyāhāra. The senses are essentially extensions of the mind. When they are active outward, they drag the mind along with them. Indriyanam hi charatam yan manonu vidhiyate tadasya harati prajñam vayurnavam ivambasi. The senses, indriyanam hi charatam yan mano anuvidiyate. So the mind, if it thinks of something, the senses, like horses, they will drag the mind to that object, just like a wind carrying the boat away, boat which is not anchored, like that they will take away. They will snatch the mind and take away. So when they're active outwardly, they drag the mind along with them, making the mind restless. So the senses have that power. But when they are withdrawn inwardly, they merge back into the source, the mind stuff. Okay, the chitta. So that's what happens. It's just as though it's just merges, it resembles the mind. But when the mind starts thinking about external things, they just turn around and they go after those things. So that is the sense control, pratyāhāra. And the example gives, the Vyasa gives the example of a queen. The other bees follow the queen bee. So they just go wherever the queen bee goes. So it's like that. So the queen bee, you have to keep it under control. Okay. And the benefit of pratyāhāra is tata parama vashyatendriyanam. From that withdrawal of the senses, parama vashyate. Parama means supreme. Vashyata means mastery. One gets supreme mastery over the senses. By the act of the mind, turning inward, the senses are also pulled in. If the mind thinks of external objects, the senses go there. And if the mind is turning inward, calming down, then the senses also come, just merge with the mind. So that's what's happening. Okay. In symbolism, in asana practice is kurmasana. You saw kurmasana, right? That's like a tortoise. To supta kurmasana, tortoise with all the limbs withdrawn inward. So in the Bhagavad Gītā also, kurma's example is given in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gītā. Just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs, then the yogi pulls the yada samharate chayam kurmonganiva sarvashah indriyani indriyartebhyah tasya prajñā pratishtita. When this person, like a tortoise withdrawing its limbs, withdraws their senses from the sense objects, their wisdom is said to be well established. Tasya prajñā pratishtita. Arjuna is asking about the sthita prajñā. What are the characteristics of a person of steady, ascertained wisdom? And Bhagavan tells this. Okay. So this is symbolism in asana practice for pratyāhāra, withdrawing the senses. Like a kurma, a tortoise withdraws its limbs. Like that, the person withdraws the senses from the sense objects and turns them inward and merges them with the mind. So that brings us to the end of chapter 2, the Sādhana Pādaḥ. I'll stop the recording.